For anyone who has spent some time practicing the guitar, or any instrument for that matter, it's no secret that it's a long path to attaining technical proficiency. But today, we have more resources and tools than ever to shorten this path. Just the advances in video technology alone has made life so much easier, both for students and instructors. In the previous video, we looked at slow practicing as one of the most effective methods for mastering a new piece, at the same time troubleshooting technical issues in your playing. I also mentioned our new project, the slow walkthrough videos, as additional tools for your practice to make the process even easier. So today we'll take a closer look at these videos, how you can use them in your practice sessions, how not to use them. I'll have a couple of cautionary notes for you on that. We'll also flip things around and talk about your own videos, which I know sounds terrifying and stressful to most students, but recording your playing is something that makes a big difference in your progress. So we'll just talk about some best practices and what to look for when you record and watch your performance. One of the most common types of feedback we get is how useful it is to watch a close-up video of a piece or a specific technique you're working on. Even during a lesson with an instructor, regardless of how in-depth a topic is covered, how much time you spend, to be able to fully internalize it, to make it your own, it's going to take a few sessions of your own practice. In some cases, a lot more than a few sessions, right? And reference videos during these sessions can be extremely useful because it'll be a readily available, a great visual reminder of that new passage or some technique you just learned. Or if you're working on standalone sheet music, it can be a reminder of certain techniques or a visual reference for some concepts. Sometimes it can make all the difference just to observe a more efficient way of moving, shifting around the fingerboard, or let's say noticing a slight change of the wrist angle, or maybe a different stroke in some cases. So these walkthrough videos are kind of multi-purpose videos that'll take you through an entire piece, note by note, at a slow tempo. They're a little different than the main performance videos of all the arrangements on the channel, which demonstrate the overall level and give you kind of an overview, whereas these walkthrough videos give you a close-up view of both hands to address any questions about fingering, playability, or how to approach some of the advanced techniques that come into play in the more complex arrangements in our portfolio. That being said, these walkthrough videos don't replace and shouldn't replace the sight reading stage when you take on a new piece. Some students use them as sort of accessibility tools to learn pieces from scratch, which is fine, but studying the score by yourself, marking the hard spots, taking notes about what you find challenging, how you're approaching these issues, really make a big difference, not just for that piece, but also as a general approach, and it'll put you on the right track to be able to make your own technical and musical decisions, in a way becoming your own instructor. Just a note of caution for players studying sheet music outside the curriculum without any sort of prior training or musical background. Learning a piece, performing it, and doing it justice is much more than just playing the right notes in the right sequence and timing. I know it can be tempting to try playing pieces, some exciting repertoire above your current level, and I've done plenty of that back when I was a student, so not my place to judge. And I think it can be inspiring and rewarding, actually, especially if you approach those challenging spots as a blessing in disguise to uncover and improve areas in your technique that may need some work. So it can be a great motivational boost that way. Setting goals, using these pieces, and striving for larger goals, like some milestone pieces you want to include in your repertoire over the years. Though keep in mind that without a structured study plan, you're likely to run into many of these obstacles, and too many of these can impede your progress and kind of turn into disappointment. At the end of the day, the goal is many years of music making, performing the pieces you love, enjoying the process, and maybe sharing it with others, right? So you don't want the pieces themselves turning into obstacles that stop you from doing that. For those who still want to go straight to the pieces, I would recommend choosing them based on the appropriate level of difficulty and gradually moving on to higher levels and kind of pacing your progress. Going back to the videos, my personal favorite use case is that they can serve as a great repertoire archive. I'm sure you've noticed too, when you learn a new piece, it's kind of a fleeting experience in the sense that maybe you'll make some technical progress, learn some new things, but when you take a break from that particular piece and not think about it for a while, you'll notice that your muscle memory has not been so kind. And even with the score, if you didn't take detailed notes on the fingering sequences or any custom solutions you may have had, depending on how much time you spent with it, it's going to be difficult to remember some of those tricky spots. But a video reference is going to bring things right back, and you'll be up and running much sooner by watching the video along with the sheet music. Recording your own performance can be a wonderful feedback mechanism. You know, the old school version of this is just practicing in front of a mirror, which is also good advice, but videos are kind of the 21st century version of that, except maybe even more effective because there's going to be a preparation, a small, performance aspect to it. When you watch your playing from a third-person point of view, it gives you a whole new perspective. You can catch some things that you maybe theoretically knew, but have not just yet been able to put into practice. And so they end up being kind of a self-coaching session. So what to look for when you record your playing? Well, if this is a new practice for you, to kind of ease into it and take the stress out of it, you can just start with those short segments and watch for all the different aspects we talked about in the first video. So please make sure to check out that first episode if you haven't done so. But for beginners, I would suggest keeping that checklist as simple as you can, not getting lost in details. Back when I was a student, I used to obsess about the smallest little details, something different every week, with every new piece. Over the years, as you keep up the momentum and the progress, you get to realize some of those details, well, most of those details actually turn out to be a lot less significant and relevant than you thought at first. Because in the beginning, you just don't have too many points of reference. But down the line, you get to work through so many exceptions to your long list of basic beginner's rules. They basically turn into just an option out of many possibilities. So just keeping it simple, a basic checklist for beginning levels could be the wrist, the hand position, finger alignment is a good one, and your sitting position and posture is an easy one to observe as well. Wrist is an important one. You want to make sure it's fairly straight, not too much of a bend, except maybe when you're reaching up to the upper frets. That's when we bring the wrist forward a little bit, just to be able to reach easily, right? To check for finger alignment, you can just set the camera right across and see that your fingers are landing straight, not at an angle, like so. You want especially these two fingers, 2 and 3, to be somewhat perpendicular to the fingerboard, and that's going to help align the rest of the fingers. No need to start measuring angles or anything, because keep in mind, we're not looking for perfection, especially in the beginning stages. Just a consistent application of the basics to establish some good habits. For the right hand, an important one to check for is making sure your hand and arm are stable during the strokes and not moving around too much when you pluck the strings. And that's going to be a matter of basically using your arm and even shoulder muscles just enough to stabilize that impact from each stroke, which is not much of a force, right? As for the sitting position, that's kind of a big one, and there's going to be a separate video because, to be honest, it's an awkward instrument to hold and play, and the stabilizing points are not always so clear. So in that video, I'll go over different positions and tools using a footstool, knee stand, and some other widgets to show you different options you can experiment with and choose an optimal sitting position for yourself. But basically, regardless of what you're using, you want to make sure you're in a balanced and relaxed sitting position. Just keep an eye on your posture, check to see if your shoulders, neck, and spine are relaxed and aligned, and that it doesn't take too much of an effort just to hold and balance your guitar. Another sign, by the way, is if you're making a lot of faces involuntarily while you play. that could be an indication of excessive tension as well. Now, speaking of tension, you may be thinking, why do I need a video to see if I have too much tension? I can just feel it. This is true for massive amounts of tension, the kind that, keeps you from playing through your pieces because your hands are too tired. That'll be easier to tell. But for not so obvious, kind of sneaky, chronic tension in the background, that can be hard to catch. And it may lead to some serious problems in the long run, like tendinitis, repetitive strain injuries, and so on and so forth. So you want to definitely catch these early on. In the advanced levels, you can use your videos to evaluate not only these technical issues, maybe as a maintenance routine, but also musical ones. Are you happy with the tempo, your dynamics? Are you phrasing the piece as you would like to? Is your projection well enough, and so on? But to get there, to be able to see the bigger picture, you would need to eventually record longer segments, phrases, at which point, preferably, you want to memorize the piece to be able to play by heart, so you can focus on your playing the piece and not where you are on the sheet music. So that brings up memorization as another really common issue for players of all levels. Actually, the slow practice steps we covered in the previous video go a long way towards memorizing a piece of music. But there's another key component of practicing, which is visualization and mental practice. And among its many benefits is memorization. So I want to make sure you have that in your tool set. And that's what we'll talk about in the next video, and maybe debunk some myths about it too. Till then, practice well. I'll see you next time.